The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across nearly a kilometer of polished, obsidian floors and crystalline walls that hummed with ancient energy. And within this magnificent space sat the representatives of over 200 spacefaring civilizations. Each one a master of technologies that could reshape stars and bend the fabric of reality itself. Ambassador Vexthal of the Karathi Dominion stood at the central speaking platform, his scaled skin gleaming under the soft blue lights that illuminated every corner of the vast room. And his four eyes swept across the assembled delegates with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. The Karathi Dominion hereby announces our intention to bring the human species under our protection, he declared, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic systems to reach every ear and receptor in attendance. And we shall accomplish this through whatever means prove necessary. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing a tactical map of a small yellow star system on the outer edge of the Orion Arm. And 300 red markers indicated the positions of Karathi warships already moving toward their target, High Counselor Uran, an ancient being whose body had long ago transformed into living crystal that pulsed with soft golden light, leaned forward from the elevated seat reserved for the chamber's presiding officer, Ambassador Vexthal. The counselor spoke, and the crystalline voice carried notes of something that sounded remarkably like disbelief. You are telling this council that the Karathi Dominion intends to launch a military campaign against Earth and its colonies. That is correct, High Counselor. The humans, Uran repeated, as if saying the word twice might somehow change its meaning. You intend to subjugate the humans? Vexthal's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his species. They are a young and primitive race, barely capable of traveling between their own planets, and they have refused our generous offers of protectorate status for the third time this decade. So we shall simply take what they will not give. Murmurs erupted throughout the chamber like a wave crashing against rocks, and delegates who had sat in bored silence through countless sessions suddenly came alive with urgent whispers and frantic gestures. The Etherian delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid shell of shimmering light, flickered through colors that the translation system struggled to interpret. Though fear and alarm came through clearly enough, the machine collective's representative, a chrome sphere that floated precisely 1 meter above its designated seat, emitted a series of warning tones that the chamber systems translated as extreme caution advisories. This is most unwise, spoke Delegate Mirasol of the Ven Confederation, rising from her seat on trembling legs that betrayed her species' usually calm demeanor, and her large dark eyes blinked rapidly as she addressed the Karathi ambassador. Has the Dominion not received the restricted files regarding humanity? We have received all relevant intelligence, Vexthal replied dismissively, waving one clawed hand as though brushing away an annoying insect. The sealed archives, Mirasol pressed, her voice growing more urgent. The documents that we keep from younger races for their own protection. The files that require unanimous council approval to access? Superstition and propaganda, Vexthal snorted. Nothing more than the fearful imaginings of species too timid to take what is rightfully theirs. The Etherian delegates' form destabilized momentarily, colors swirling chaotically, before reforming into a deeper shade of crimson that everyone recognized as profound alarm. We have studied humanity for decades, Vexthal continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing unease around him. They are a fractured species that fights among themselves constantly over the most trivial matters. They have no unified military command, and their technology is laughably primitive compared to even the youngest council races. They have nuclear weapons, one delegate called out, as do we all. Vexthal responded with a shrug, and ours are vastly more powerful. They have shown remarkable adaptability, another voice added, Adaptability means nothing against superior firepower, the Karathi ambassador stated flatly. High Counselor Uran raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. Though the tension in the air remained thick enough to taste Ambassador Vexthil, the counselor spoke slowly, choosing each word with obvious care. I must ask you a very important question, and I need you to answer honestly. Of course. High Counselor, how much do you actually know about the human species beyond what your military intelligence has provided? Vexthil's eyes narrowed. I know everything that is relevant to our campaign. Do you know about the Varex incident? A brief pause. I am not familiar with that term. The Etherian survey mission of 2 centuries past? No. The Machine Collective's psychological analysis of human entertainment media? Entertainment media, Vexthil scoffed. What possible relevance could that have to military operations? The Machine Collective's sphere pulsed with light, and its translated voice filled the chamber. It has every relevance, Ambassador. For entertainment reveals the dreams and desires of a species. And human dreams are unlike anything we have encountered in 10,000 years of cataloging civilizations. Dreams do not stop plasma cannons. Vexthil stated no. The collective agreed. But humans do not dream of stopping, they dream of winning. And there is a profound difference that you do not yet understand. The chamber erupted again. And this time High Counselor Uran did not call for silence. Instead, letting the wave of voices wash over the Karathi ambassador like a warning tide delegate. Marisol had pulled up classified files on her personal display, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through page after page of incident reports and analysis documents. The Etherian had begun projecting historical footage directly from its energy matrix. Images of Earth and its inhabitants flickering in the air. Around its seat, even the usually stoic representatives of the oldest races have begun conferring urgently with their aides and each. Other Ambassador Vexthil stood alone at the speaking platform, his confidence finally beginning to waver as he realized that the reaction around him was not the result of cowardice or jealousy, but something far more unsettling. Perhaps High Counselor Uran spoke, cutting through the noise with crystalline clarity. We should take a brief recess so that the Council can properly brief Ambassador Vexthil on certain matters he appears to have overlooked. I do not need a briefing, Vexthil insisted, though his voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. Trust me, Ambassador, Uran replied. And something in the ancient being's tone made even the veteran diplomat take a step backward. You absolutely do. And so the session paused, and the delegates began to gather. And somewhere in the observers' gallery, a human woman in a simple gray suit watched the proceedings with a small smile that did not quite reach her eyes. The recess lasted only 30 minutes, but when the delegates returned to their seats, there was a heaviness in the air that had not existed before. And Ambassador Vexthil found himself standing at the center of the chamber while representatives of the galaxy's oldest civilizations prepared to speak. High Counselor Uran nodded toward the Etherian delegate. You may begin. The being of light rose from its seat and drifted toward the speaking platform, its form shifting through soft blues and purples that the translation systems identified as solemnity and remembrance. 207 cycles ago, the Etherian began, its voice like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. My people sent a survey team to the third planet of this same yellow star that the Karathi now threaten. The chamber's displays activated, showing an image of Earth as it had appeared over 2 centuries prior. A blue and green marble spinning slowly in the void. Our surveyors were curious about the dominant species, these humans, and they descended to observe them more closely, choosing to examine one of their oceanic vessels, a primitive craft made of wood and cloth that traveled using nothing more than wind power. Vexthil's scales shifted slightly, but he said nothing. Our surveyors found this vessel amusing, the Etherian continued, and in their amusement, they grew careless. They revealed themselves to the humans aboard, expecting the typical reaction of a pre-spacefaring species: the fear, the worship, the paralysis that usually accompanies first contact with obviously superior beings. The display changed to show artistic reconstructions based on Etherean records, depicting a wooden sailing ship and the glowing forms that had appeared above it. The humans did not react as expected, the Etherean said, and its colors darkened. They were afraid, yes, but their fear did not paralyze them. Instead, they did something that our surveyors found deeply unsettling. What did they do? Vexed asked. Unable to contain his curiosity, they took notes. Silence fell across the chamber. They studied our forms, sketched our vessels, attempted to communicate despite having no common language, asked questions through gestures and drawings. One human even attempted to climb toward our survey craft using ropes and wooden poles. The Etherean paused, letting the weight of its words settle over the assembly. Within one generation after that encounter, humans had built vessels capable of crossing their entire world's oceans. Within 3 generations, they had split the atom and begun reaching toward the stars. Within 5, they had established colonies on neighboring planets. You are saying, Vexthal spoke slowly, that a single accidental contact accelerated their technological development? I am saying, the Etherean replied, that they looked upon beings of pure energy who could cross galaxies in the blink of an eye. And their response was not to cower or worship, but to learn, to adapt, to grow. They saw our technology and decided they wanted it for themselves. The Etherean returned to its seat, and the machine collective sphere floated forward to take its place. We intercepted human radio transmissions, beginning approximately 150 cycles ago. The collective began, its harmonized voice filling every corner of the chamber. At first, we cataloged them as simple communication signals, but then we began analyzing the content of what they were broadcasting. New images appeared on the displays, scenes from human entertainment that the collective had collected over decades of observation. They broadcast stories, the collective explained, fictional narratives designed purely for entertainment purposes. And we analyzed these stories to understand human psychology. And what did you learn? Vexthal asked, his voice carefully neutral. We learned that humans are fundamentally broken by galactic standards. The chamber stirred, but the collective continued without pause in their stories. They dream of war with gods and monsters. They imagine facing beings of infinite power and cosmic scope. And in these dreams, they do not accept defeat. They do not submit. They do not even consider surrender as an option. The display showed a rapid montage of human fiction. Battles against impossible odds. Last stands against overwhelming forces. Heroes who refused to stop fighting even when victory seemed impossible. Most species create entertainment that reflects their deepest fears and desires in realistic proportions. The collective stated, they dream of modest victories and acceptable compromises. Humans dream of punching gods in the face and winning. That is merely fantasy, Vexthal said dismissively, though his voice had grown uncertain. That is the point. Ambassador, their fantasies reveal what they believe is possible, what they aspire to achieve. Most species do not even allow themselves to imagine total victory against superior opponents. Humans consider it the default narrative. The collective returned to its position, and High Counselor Uran pulled up a classified file that required 3 separate authorization codes to access. 40 cycles ago, Uran began, the crystalline voice heavy with gravity. A Varex raiding party intercepted a human colony ship in the Kepler transit lanes. The display showed the encounter, a massive Varex war cruiser dwarfing a simple human transport vessel. The raiders were conducting a routine harvest operation, taking prisoners for labor and resources for their holdings. and the human ship carried 53 civilians, farmers and scientists and teachers traveling to a new colony world. Along with 12 children, Vextil's scales had begun to pale. Though he tried to maintain his composure, the Varex War Legion that conducted this raid numbered 8,000 warriors. Urine continued. Veteran soldiers equipped with the finest weapons and armor their civilization could produce. And the humans escaped? Vextil guessed. No, Ambassador. The humans did not escape. Silence. The humans counterattacked. The display changed to show aftermath images that made several delegates look away. The wreckage of Varex ships scattered across space. The empty hulls of what had once been a war cruiser. 53 human civilians, armed with nothing but improvised weapons and maintenance tools, against 8,000 professional soldiers. Impossible, Vextil whispered. The humans lost 19 of their number. Urine stated flatly. The Varex lost everything. There were no survivors among the raiders. The humans did not take prisoners. The chamber sat in stunned silence. And then, Urine continued, the surviving humans took the Varex ships. They reverse-engineered the technology they found. And within a decade, they had armed their entire colonial fleet with weapons that exceeded Varex designs. They sent a message to the Varex hegemony. Delegate Mirasol added quietly. It said simply, "Thank you for the upgrades." Vextil stood very still, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed what he had heard. The Varex hegemony, he said slowly. They have not conducted any raids in 40 cycles. No, Urine agreed. They have not, and when asked why, their leaders speak only of the humans. They do not speak of fear, Ambassador. They speak of wisdom. Wisdom in what? In knowing when you have found an enemy that it is better to leave alone. The chamber waited, watching the Karathi ambassador struggle with information that contradicted everything his military intelligence had told him. These are isolated incidents, Vextil finally said, though his voice carried no conviction. Individual cases that do not represent the species as a whole. That is what the Varex believed. The machine collective spoke. That is what every species believes before they learn otherwise. Humans have a saying, High Counselor Urine added, leaning forward with a soft chime of crystal against crystal. They say that the only thing they love more than a fair fight is an unfair one where they are the underdog. Why? Vextil asked, genuine confusion coloring his voice. Because, Urine replied, winning against impossible odds is apparently more satisfying to them than easy victory. And in the observer's gallery, the human woman in the gray suit checked her wrist device and smiled. Delegate Mirasol of the Ven Confederation rose from her seat and moved to the speaking platform with the careful steps of someone approaching a dangerous subject. Her large dark eyes sweeping across the assembly before settling on Ambassador. Vextil, the incidents you have heard about are not isolated, she began, her voice steady despite the trembling of her delicate hands. They are symptoms of something far more fundamental. And to understand why attacking Earth would be catastrophic, you must first understand what kind of world produced the human species. She activated her personal display, and the chamber's holographic systems projected a massive image of Earth at the center of the room. This is their homeworld, Mirasol said, and it is a death trap. The image began to animate, showing the planet's weather patterns, geological activity, and biological systems in accelerated time. Their world experiences regular atmospheric disturbances, called hurricanes, that can level entire cities with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Their tectonic plates shift constantly, creating earthquakes that collapse buildings and tsunamis that drown coastlines. Their volcanoes erupt with enough force to block out sunlight for years at a time. Vextil watched the display with growing unease. And that is merely the planet itself, Mirasol continued. The life forms on Earth are engaged in constant biological warfare. Their oceans contain predators with hundreds of teeth that can detect blood from kilometers away. Their land masses are home to creatures that evolved specifically to kill and consume other creatures. Their very air carries microscopic organisms that wage endless chemical warfare against every living thing they encounter. Surely the humans have conquered these threats, Vextheel said, though his voice lacked certainty. They have adapted to them, Ambassador, which is far more disturbing. Mirasol pulled up anatomical diagrams of the human body, pointing to various systems as she spoke. Humans are what galactic biologists classify as persistence predators. They evolved not to be faster or stronger than their prey, but to simply outlast it. They would chase animals for hours or even days until the target collapsed from exhaustion, while the humans simply kept coming. They run their prey to death? One delegate asked in horror. Correct, and this persistence extends to every aspect of their existence. Their bodies can survive damage that would kill most species instantly. They can lose limbs and continue fighting. They can suffer wounds that expose internal organs and remain conscious. Their blood contains chemicals that allow it to clot and seal injuries in minutes. The display showed medical records from various interstellar encounters, documenting human survivors of injuries that should have been fatal. Most remarkably, Mirasol continued, their psychological response to trauma is the opposite of what logic would suggest. Shared suffering does not divide them. It bonds them. They form what they call trauma bonds, becoming more loyal to each other through hardship rather than less. This seems counterproductive to survival, the machine collective observed by individual metrics. Yes, but humans do not operate on individual metrics. They operate on group metrics, and a group that becomes stronger through adversity is nearly impossible to break. Mirasol changed the display to show human history. Wars and conflicts stretching back thousands of years. They have fought each other since they developed the ability to hold tools. Their recorded history contains fewer than 300 years of total peace across their entire planet. And many scholars believe even that figure is exaggerated. A species constantly at war with itself should have destroyed itself long ago. Vexthale reasoned. That is what logic suggests. Ambassador, and yet their population has only grown. They numbered less than 1 billion when they began their industrial age. They numbered nearly 8 billion when they achieved spaceflight. And they now number over 12 billion across their colonies. They thrive on conflict, the Etherian delegate observed, its colors shifting to shades of deep concern. More than thrive, Mirasol agreed. They require it. Humans who live in conditions of total peace and comfort for extended periods often develop psychological disorders. They become restless and destructive. They need challenges to overcome, enemies to defeat, problems to solve. This is insane, Vexthale whispered. By galactic standards, yes, humans are clinically insane. But their insanity follows consistent patterns that make them terrifyingly effective. The machine collective floated forward slightly, adding its analysis to the presentation. The most disturbing aspect of human psychology is their capacity for spite. The harmonized voice explained. Our behavioral models cannot accurately predict it. Define spite in this context. Vexthale requested. The willingness to harm oneself in order to harm an enemy. Humans will sacrifice resources, opportunities, even their own lives, simply to ensure that an opponent does not achieve victory. This behavior serves no logical purpose. It produces no benefit for the individual or their group. And yet humans engage in it regularly. Surely this is rare, Vexthale said hopefully. It is not rare. Ambassador, it is celebrated. Human culture is filled with stories of individuals who chose mutual destruction over surrender, who burned their own resources rather than let enemies take them, who died fighting against impossible odds purely because they refused to let their opponents win easily. High Counselor Uran rose from the elevated seat, crystalline form catching the light as the ancient being moved to stand beside the displays. There is one more aspect that must be discussed, Ambassador, and it is perhaps the most important. What could be worse than what I have already heard? Creativity, Uran said simply. The chamber fell silent. Most species develop along predictable paths. Their technologies evolve in logical sequences. Their strategies follow patterns that can be analyzed and anticipated. Their responses to threats fall within calculable parameters. And humans do not? Humans invented nuclear weapons and then used them on themselves. They developed space travel and immediately began planning how to weaponize asteroids. They created artificial intelligence and within years were designing ways to merge it with their own biology. The display showed a timeline of human technological development. Innovations appearing at intervals that seem chaotic and random. They do not think in straight lines. Ambassador, they make connections between unrelated concepts. They solve problems using methods that no rational mind would consider. They look at the rules of the universe and ask why instead of simply accepting them. Every species asks questions. Vexthel protested. Humans ask the wrong questions, Uran replied. And then they find answers that should not exist. They discovered that light behaves as both a particle and a wave, and instead of being confused, they built technologies that exploit both properties simultaneously. They learned that the universe contains more dark matter than visible matter and immediately began designing ways to detect and harvest it. They are dangerous. Vexthale finally admitted. They are the most dangerous species this council has ever encountered. Uran agreed, not because they are the strongest or the most advanced, but because they cannot be predicted, they cannot be contained, and they absolutely refuse to accept defeat. What would you have me do, High Counselor? I would have you recall your fleet before it is too late, and if I do not? Uran's crystalline form dimmed slightly, and when the ancient being spoke again, there was something almost like pity in the resonant voice. Then the Karathi Dominion will learn what so many others have learned before you, that there are some worlds it is better to leave alone. And in the observer's gallery, the human woman had stopped smiling. Her eyes now fixed on her wrist device with an intensity that suggested she was receiving important information. A new voice spoke from the observer's gallery, cutting through the heavy silence that had settled over the chamber, like a knife through silk. If I might be permitted to contribute to this discussion, the voice said, calm and pleasant and carrying. Just a hint of amusement. Every eye and sensor in the chamber turned toward the source. And Ambassador Vexthel felt his scales ripple with surprise as he recognized the speaker. The human woman in the gray suit stood at the railing of the observer's gallery, her posture relaxed and her expression friendly, as though she were attending a casual social gathering rather than a debate about the invasion of her homeworld. Ambassador Chen Wei. High Counselor Uran acknowledged, crystalline voice carefully neutral. The observer's gallery is traditionally reserved for non-participating species. Of course, High Counselor, and I apologize for the interruption, but I could not help but overhear that the Karathi Dominion is planning to invade my planet, and I thought perhaps I might offer some perspective. Vexthel straightened to his full height, his four eyes narrowing with irritation. You have no voice in this chamber, human. Your species has not earned a seat on this council. That is absolutely true. Ambassador, Chen Wei agreed pleasantly, nodding as though conceding a point in a friendly debate. We are still quite new to all of this. Barely 2 centuries of space travel, primitive technology, no unified military, just as you said. Then you understand your position. Oh, I understand it perfectly, Chen Wei replied, and something in her tone made several of the elder delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. But I thought you might appreciate some additional information before you commit 300 warships. to what your military planners are calling Operation Swift Conquest. Vexthal's scales went pale. How do you know that name? Chen Wei smiled and tapped her wrist device. The chamber's holographic displays flickered once, twice, and then transformed entirely, showing images that made the Karathi ambassador stumble backward in shock. The Karathi fleet hung in space exactly as the earlier tactical display had shown. But now the images came from angles that should have been impossible. Internal views of ship corridors, engine rooms, bridge stations, personal quarters. Every vessel laid bare as though invisible observers had simply walked through their hulls. Your flagship, the Dominion's pride, Chen Wei said conversationally, pointing to one of the displays. Beautiful vessel, excellent weapon systems, and a wonderful coffee machine in the officers' mess. Lieutenant Crix uses it every morning at 0600 Standard Time. He takes it with cream and 2 sweeteners. The chamber had gone absolutely still. Commander Vethra prefers tea, and Admiral Sorath does not drink caffeine at all, though he does have a fondness for the spiced pastries from the third moon of your homeworld. He has them shipped specially and keeps them locked in his personal quarters. This is impossible, Vexthil whispered. Chief Engineer Morath has been worried about a fluctuation in your 4th reactor. He has submitted 3 maintenance requests that have been denied due to budget constraints. I hope that does not become a problem during combat operations. How are you doing this? Chen Wei's smile did not waver. Ambassador, you said that you have been monitoring humanity for decades, which is true. Your surveillance drones have been quite thorough. But I wonder if it occurred to you that while you were watching us, we might have been watching you back. She tapped her device again, and the displays shifted to show tactical maps of Karathi space, military installations marked in precise detail, patrol routes traced in glowing lines, defense network vulnerabilities highlighted in red. We have been monitoring your fleet since it entered our sensor range, Chen Wei explained, her voice still pleasant, which, I should mention, extends considerably further than your intelligence services believed. We have also taken the liberty of mapping every Karathi military installation in 4 sectors. Your defense network has some fascinating vulnerabilities that I am sure your engineers would love to know about. Ambassador Vexthil's 4 eyes had gone wide, and his mouth worked silently for several seconds before he managed to speak. This is an act of war. He finally said, this is espionage. This is a declaration of hostile intent. Is it? Chen Wei asked, tilting her head slightly. I rather thought we were just sharing information. Knowledge is power, after all, and that is something humans believe quite strongly. She walked slowly along the gallery railing, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. But I want to be absolutely clear about something, Ambassador, and I want everyone in this chamber to understand this as well. She stopped and turned to face the assembly directly, and the pleasant smile finally faded from her face, replaced by an expression of calm intensity that made several delegates unconsciously lean backward. Earth has 12 billion people, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. And we argue constantly. We disagree about politics and religion and economics and art and 1,000 other things. We can barely agree on what temperature to set our climate controls. And we spent nearly a century debating whether certain beverages should be classified as food or medicine. A few nervous chuckles emerged from the assembly, quickly silenced. But there is one thing, Chen Wei continued. One single thing that unites every human being on Earth and in our colonies. One point on which we achieve absolute and total agreement. She leaned forward against the railing, her eyes fixed on Vexthal. We really do not like being threatened. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Your fleet is impressive. Ambassador, 300 warships equipped with the finest weapons the Karathi Dominion can produce. Crews trained to perfection. Commanders with centuries of combined experience. She paused, We have 7 billion military-age adults who grew up watching movies about fighting alien invasions, and every single one of them has been waiting their entire lives for someone to give them a chance to live out those fantasies. The Machine Collective emitted a series of tones that the translation systems rendered as mathematical calculations of probability, none of them favorable to the Karathi. We do not want a war, Ambassador, Chen Wei said, her voice softening slightly. We genuinely prefer peace. We would much rather trade with the Dominion than fight it, and we believe that cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. But? Vexthal asked, and his voice had grown very small. But if your fleet crosses the boundary of our solar system with hostile intent, you will not be facing a primitive species unprepared for invasion. You will be facing 12 billion humans who have spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. Building weapons we have never shown anyone. Developing technologies we have never revealed. Training soldiers we have never deployed. She smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in it. We have been watching, Ambassador, and we have been learning. And we have been waiting, and I promise you this. If you come to Earth as conquerors, you will not leave as anything at all. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute before High Counselor Yuren finally spoke. Ambassador Chen Wei. The crystalline voice said carefully, "Are you saying that humanity has been concealing its true capabilities from the galactic community?" Chen Wei turned to face the High Counselor with an expression of innocent surprise. "Concealing?" She repeated, "Not at all, High Counselor. We have simply been following the standard protocols for primitive species, keeping to ourselves, developing quietly, not attracting attention." She glanced at Vexthal. Attention is so tiresome after all. And in that moment, every delegate in the chamber understood that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. Not because their intelligence was faulty, but because the humans had wanted them to be wrong. The Karathi ambassador looked at the displays, still, showing his fleet's every secret. Looked at the human woman standing calmly in the gallery, and for the first time in his long career, felt the cold touch of genuine fear. 3 days after Ambassador Chen Wei's demonstration in the Galactic Council chamber, the Karathi fleet reversed course. The official statement from the Dominion's High Command cited logistical concerns and strategic reassessment, claiming that the original deployment had been merely a training exercise that had been misinterpreted by foreign observers. Nobody believed a single word of it within a week. The Karathi Dominion had formally submitted an application for a non-aggression pact with Earth's United Nations, and the terms they proposed were so generous that several council analysts initially assumed the documents had been altered. As some kind of joke, they had not been altered, High Counselor. Yuren called an emergency session of the full council, and for the first time in living memory, every seat was filled, with delegates who usually sent subordinates insisting on attending personally. "We must discuss the human question," Yuren began, the ancient crystalline voice carrying notes of urgency that few had ever heard from the normally composed leader. "They have demonstrated capabilities that none of our intelligence services anticipated, and we must determine how to proceed." The Machine Collective spoke first, its harmonized voice filling the chamber with calculated precision. "We have completed a full analysis of the security breach that occurred during Ambassador Chen's demonstration, and our findings are troubling. Define troubling. Delegate Marisol requested. The humans did not hack our systems during the demonstration. They hacked them weeks before the Karathi fleet was even announced. They have had access to the Council's secure channels for an unknown period of time, and they chose to reveal this access at the moment of maximum psychological impact." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "There's more," the collective continued. "During their brief intrusion, they left traces in our most classified database. Traces that we believe were intentional." "What kind of traces?" "A message. It reads, 'Fix your firewall. Happy to help if you need it.'" The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They breached our highest security protocols, the Etherean delegate said slowly, its form flickering with colors that suggested profound unease. And instead of exploiting this access for espionage or sabotage, they left a helpful note. That is correct. Why would they do this? High Counselor Urin leaned forward, crystalline facets catching the light. Because they wanted us to know that they could. They were demonstrating capability without demonstrating hostility. It is a message, and we would be foolish to ignore it. What kind of message? Vexto asked, his voice smaller than it had been in previous sessions. His earlier arrogance completely absent. That they are not our enemies unless we choose to make them so, Urin replied. That they have the power to hurt us but prefer not to use it. That they are offering us a choice. The choice between friendship and war, Mirasol said softly. Yes, and I think we all understand which option leads to better outcomes. The Etherean delegate rose, its shimmering form solidifying into something like determination. I move that we immediately extend full council membership to the human species, with all rights and protections that membership entails. The response was instantaneous. Seconded. Said Delegate Mirasol. Seconded. Said the Machine Collective. Seconded. Said Ambassador Vexthal, his voice barely above a whisper. Seconded. Echoed every other delegate in the chamber, the word overlapping until it became a chorus of unanimous agreement. High Counselor Urin nodded slowly. The motion passes. I will prepare the formal invitation personally. As the session concluded and delegates began filtering out of the chamber, a junior aide approached the High Counselor with a nervous expression. Counselor, the aide said, Ambassador Chen Wei is requesting a meeting. She says that Earth would like to discuss several matters of mutual interest. What kind of matters? Trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation, and, the aide hesitated, defensive alliances. Urin's crystalline form flickered with something that might have been amusement or might have been resignation. Of course they do, the ancient being murmured. They demonstrate that they could destroy us all, and then they ask to be our friends. It is a very human approach. Should I schedule the meeting, Counselor? Immediately, and for the love of all that is sacred. Do not keep her waiting. I suspect humans are not patient when they want something. The aide hurried off, and Urin stood alone in the emptying chamber, contemplating the massive holographic display that still showed Earth hanging in space. A small blue world that had somehow become the most significant planet in the galaxy. 2 centuries, the counselor said to no one in particular. 2 centuries of spaceflight, and they have already surpassed civilizations that have existed for millennia. What will they be in another 2 centuries? What will they be in 1,000 years? The question hung unanswered in the air. Ambassador Chen Wei arrived at the meeting room precisely on time, accompanied by a small delegation of human diplomats who carried themselves with the relaxed confidence of people who knew they held strong cards. High Counselor, Chen Wei said warmly, offering her hand in the human greeting gesture. Thank you for seeing us on such short notice. Urin extended a crystalline appendage to complete the gesture. Thank you for not simply taking what you wanted, Ambassador. I suspect you could have. Chen Wei's smile was genuine this time. Without the sharp edges that had appeared during her demonstration, we could have, she agreed. But that is not who we want to be. We spent a long time on our little world fighting among ourselves, taking what we wanted without asking, and it brought us nothing but suffering. And now? Now we are in a very large galaxy full of species who could become friends or enemies, and we have decided that we would prefer friends. War is exhausting, Counselor, and humans get tired just like everyone else. Your demonstration suggested otherwise. Our demonstration showed what we can do when we must, Chen Wei replied. It did not show what we prefer to do when given a choice. We prefer to build things, Counselor. To create and explore and discover. We want to see what is out there, not burn it down. The meeting lasted several hours, and when it concluded, the foundations have been laid for agreements that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Trade routes were established connecting Earth to dozens of council worlds. Scientific exchanges began that would accelerate technological development across multiple species. Cultural programs were created that would help bridge the gaps between humanity and its new galactic neighbors, and a quiet corner of the agreement. Almost as an afterthought, a mutual defense pact was signed that guaranteed Earth's protection by the full might of the Galactic Council. One more thing. Counselor, Chen Wei said as the meeting concluded, I wanted to apologize. For what, Ambassador? For the firewall comment. That was a bit rude. And my superiors asked me to express our regret for the breach itself. We should have asked permission before accessing your systems. Yurin studied the human woman for a long moment, trying to determine if she was joking. You are apologizing for hacking our most secure networks? It was impolite, Chen Wei said simply. And we would like to start our relationship with the Council on a foundation of mutual respect. The High Counselor made a sound that the translation systems struggled to interpret. Something between a laugh and a sigh of disbelief. Ambassador Chen, Yurin said finally, I believe I am beginning to understand why so many species find humans so unsettling. You are unpredictable in the most confusing ways. Is that a bad thing? I do not know yet, but I suspect the galaxy is about to find out. Chen Wei smiled and offered her hand again. Then let us find out together, Counselor. I think it will be an interesting journey. And as they shook hands, sealing the beginning of a new era, somewhere in the depths of space, the Karathi fleet continued its retreat. And aboard the flagship Dominion's Pride, Admiral Sorath sat alone in his quarters, eating spiced pastries from the third moon of his homeworld and wondering how the humans had known about his secret indulgence. He never did figure it out. And somehow that bothered him more than anything else. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had announced its presence not with war, but with a warning. Not with destruction, but with demonstration. Not with threats, but with the promise of something far more unsettling: partnership, and across 100 worlds, in 1,000 languages. The same question was being asked by beings who had thought they understood the universe and were now realizing they had missed something important. What would the humans do next? Nobody knew, and perhaps that was the point.